Crash Bandicoot! It's about time!
G'day Earthlings, Dr. Rank here, and welcome to Gaming Legends, the show that always thinks 4 parallel universes ahead. Crash Bandicoot 4 is the 8th game in the Crash Bandicoot Trilogy, featuring a ton more collectibles, mechanics, characters, and time travel paradoxes. I know you've been waiting for this one, so let's cut to the chase. Can you beat Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, without spinning? Our goal is to beat the game in retro mode without ever performing a spin attack with any character. This mostly means we can't press the primary attack button, which I remapped to R3 to avoid pressing it accidentally. The run is complete when we win the final boss battle. And as a bonus challenge, we're doing a max % run, aiming for every single collectible we possibly can. Yes, even those ones. And finally, we'll also be aiming for every possible trophy/achievement. Without further ado, let's get started. Crashworth Cortex the First! How dare you perform a spin attack during an unskippable production logo? Honestly, I thought you'd gotten over this. Rude Awakening gives us a nice, easy environment to adjust to the spinless life. Most of our attacks as Crash will be slides, which are good for breaking boxes and defeating enemies at ground level. We can also use it to add more height to our jumps, which somehow gives us a trophy. For large crate stacks like this though, the belly flop is much more effective. It's also better at hitting aerial targets like the TV, which we can turn on for a trophy. And unlike the prior games, Crash 4 lets you belly flop after a slide jump or double jump, making this the most fluid Crash has ever been. In terms of completion, each level now has 6 clear gems to collect, awarded for collecting at least 40, 60, and 80% of all Wumpa Fruits, breaking all the boxes, finishing in 3 deaths or less, and finding the hidden gem. The Wumpa gems are super easy as they're almost always earned naturally when trying for the box gem. And the hidden gems require even less effort beyond simply remembering where they are. Plus, if we break all the boxes with 0 deaths, we earn the coveted insanely perfect relic, which Rude Awakening gives us easily, though not on the first try. Before we can catch our breath though, we're immediately forced to play the second level, Insanity Peak. It's here where I should mention a key difference from every other game in the series. If you have an Aku Aku mask at the end of a level, that mask will not be transferred to the next one. Crash always starts the level with 0 masks, making Aku Aku invincibility far less accessible. You can still get extra masks with death abuse, but remember, there are collectibles that explicitly require you to not die. Thankfully, none of the boxes in Insanity Peak require any mask shenanigans. This level also houses the red gem earned by stepping on these platforms in the right order. We do need to be careful during the Spirit Guardian chase though. Boxes will only give you Wumpa Fruit if broken by Crash directly, so we have to try to slide into as many as possible to reach the Wumpa quota. Thankfully, this isn't as big an issue as it seems, especially for a professional Crash Team Rumble player like myself. Once we're done with that level, we can access the dimensional map and have total freedom for stage selection. This means we can go back to the prior levels for the time relics. Both the Sapphire and Platinum relics contribute to our percentage this time, with each awarding 2% if you have every single relic of that color. Of course, the Platinum relic times are going to be especially difficult since the fastest movement option is both inaccessible until the post-game and completely illegal. I did manage to get the Gold relic for most levels I played, but there were some where I could only get Sapphire. Keep in mind that I am not a professional speedrunner, so my declaring a Platinum as impossible doesn't necessarily make it so. If you think you can do better than me, I'll leave a pinned comment with my personal best times on every stage. Also, no, I'm not getting the purple relics. Contrary to popular belief, I do have a life. The other thing we can do on the map is change the skin that Crash is wearing, which has no purpose beyond showing off our lack of style. We've also technically unlocked Coco at this point, who has historically been the Spinless Run's mascot. Unfortunately, in Crash 4, Coco has traded in her phone for a tablet, which is much less liable to explode. And besides, swapping characters is done with the spin button and uses the spinning animation, so playing as Coco is literally not an option. Since the lady's first trophy specifically requires you to finish a level with her, our prospects of getting that trophy don't look promising. 3 trophies we can easily get are the ones that use multiplayer, which I'm willing to bet most of you forgot existed. Getting back to the story though, a real grind introduces us to the first Quantum Mask Lani Loli. His power is basically the on-off switch from Mario Maker, causing objects to phase in and out of existence at the push of a button. If a crate phases in while Crash is overlapping it, it will break instantly. Solid objects, however, will just crush you. There's also plenty of grind rails, as the name implies, but all the boxes here are on a linear path that we can just crash straight through. Also, be sure to interrupt Engine's dialogue by destroying a megaphone for a trophy. Crash Compactor has a secret path unlocked with the red gem, which allows us to reach more boxes. And unlike the prior games, gem paths set a checkpoint both when you enter them and when you exit. This level also introduces Frank the Chop Shop, a large enemy that blocks the entire path and has a huge sweeping attack. He'll be dangerous to approach, but with a properly timed slide, it's not insurmountable. The bonus round presents our first roadblock for completionism. There's a TNT sandwich with iron bread. The safest way to deal with this would be to break the question mark crate at the bottom, but the slide's hitbox doesn't reach high enough. Thankfully, the ledge on the other side is at the right height to slide into the TNT for a damage boost. Unfortunately, another TNT sandwich greets us almost immediately after the bonus round. There are nearby enemies we could send flying into it to break it, but their location and attack pattern makes sliding near impossible. Thankfully, damage boosting through an enemy has the same effect. If you've been keeping track though, you'll notice that's 2 damage boosts required for the gem, which necessitates at least 2 masks. There's only 1 Aku Aku crate in the entire level, and it's right at the start. The only way to get more is to die 5 times in the same spot. So while the box gem and 3 deaths gem for this level are possible, they are mutually exclusive within the same level attempt, which makes the insanely perfect relic impossible. One thing we can get from this level though is the flashback tape, awarded for simply reaching its location with 0 deaths. Each flashback tape we collect will unlock a new flashback level we can play. The first one, subject number 218, is extremely easy, as it's basically just bouncing from box to box. There are 3 flashback relics we can earn from these levels: Sapphire for just finishing, Gold for breaking 90% of the boxes, and Platinum for breaking all of them. The latter is, of course, the only one we care about. Hit the Road has a trophy we can earn by hitting all the drums, which can be done with both slides and belly flops. Shortly after the bonus round is a stack with iron, TNT, and Aku Aku crates in that order. In a normal playthrough, you deal with this by spinning while stationary, which has a shorter hitbox than a moving spin. But that's obviously not an option in this run, so we have to slide into the bottom crate instead. Sometimes this will cause us to take damage, nullifying the mask we just received, and sometimes it won't. Just before the Doom Rig chase is another stack that's located just past the stage boundary where slides won't reach. A belly flop gets the job done though. I blame the colorblind programmer at Toys for Bob. The Doom Rig chase uses the Junker Ball, which is not capable of spinning. The rotation you see is defined as rolling. Make sure you go dumpster diving at the checkpoint so you can destroy the RC Doom Rig for the green gem. At this point, we can play flashback tape number 2, Navigational Awareness. The start of this level has some extremely tight platforming between and underneath boxes. If you jump into the bottom of the box at just the right angle, you can just barely reach the next one. There is also a mid-air arrow crate with no solid ground beneath it, but you can just barely squeeze in under it and live to tell the tale. Once we're done there, we have no option left but to play Stage Dive, which is a boss fight against the leader of Rocket Head. After 20 years of anti-spin policy, Engine has finally given us some unwanted leniency. Luckily, we can knock his minions away just by sliding into them, and while it looks like we can't reach the weak spot in the cockpit, we can either belly flop into it, or just slide into him from the edge of the drums. The final phase makes it a bit harder to hit the minions with the narrow moving platforms, but we can still land the final hit and pull the plug on Engine's concert. Wait, why is the health bar still there in the cutscene? Booty Calls is the first level where breaking all the boxes is impossible. The grind rail section has boxes to the sides which can only be reached by spinning. That doesn't mean the bonus round is pointless though, as there's still like 90 Wumpa Fruit we can get there. This is also where we unlock the third flashback tape, Wumpa Affinity Test, which is a total pushover. For Hook, Line, and Sinker, our usual Bandicoots are a bit tied up at the moment, so we get introduced to a new protagonist from the Tornaverse. Torna's primary attack is the Spin Kick, whose animation may look more like a kick than a spin, but the Crash Team Rumble developers seem to disagree. Instead, she'll have to rely on her Slam attack and her Hook Shot, both of which can break boxes. Some enemies will be defeated with the Hook Shot, while others will just be stunned. Wait, why is that guy spinning? And the Crab Pirates are just straight up immune to it. I should also mention that Torna, along with the other characters, is physically incapable of using Aku Aku Invincibility, but that doesn't pose an issue for Hook, Line, and Sinker. There's no flashback tapes in this level, but completing it does unlock Torna's timeline levels, such as Truck Stopped. Torna's section of the level has no major roadblocks, and Crash's section is just the Junkable from Hit the Road with different box placements. Also, since Torna doesn't have a triple spin anyway, her levels are much easier to get the Platinum Time Relics first try. Jetboard Jetty features, unsurprisingly, the Jetboard, which is not capable of spinning. The bonus round is pretty much a duplicate of the Jaws of Darkness Cortex bonus round from Crash 1, but this one apparently lets you break this box by sliding. This only gives you a single Wumpa Fruit, but it looks cool, so it's required. The Raft section has some crate stacks that you need to break quickly, but a properly timed slide jump will do the trick. The Green Gem Path has this stack with a Nitro on top, but the Shark Bite will take them out with their projectiles anyway. The boss fight against Louise is done while still on the jetboard, and you'll be happy to know does not exist during the time trial. With 4 flashback tapes under our belts, we can play Bandicoot vs Wombat eval. There's a few mid-air boxes here with a low ceiling of nitros, and it's very easy to either fall into a pit or blow yourself up. You'll need to jump under the first few with extremely precise timing, then belly flop the last one to just barely squeeze past and reach the checkpoint. For this section, I recommend not triggering the TNT right away, giving you plenty of time to clear the path. The next story level is called Give It a Spin, which doesn't sound promising. Here we're introduced to Akano, who lets you use the Dark Matter Spin to glide and destroy reinforced crates. Technically, this move is performed with the mask button and not the spin button, but it looks like a spin and literally has the word spin in the name, so we'll be ignoring it as much as possible. Unfortunately, while the first few gaps are easy to clear with slide jumps, the first checkpoint is as far as we can get. The gap here is just too wide for us, and there's no solid ground anywhere that we can land on. Akano is required to get past here, so we can't finish this level. I guess it's time for us to throw the game in the trash! Prior to this run, I'd been playing on the Nintendo Switch version of the game, which came out 5 months after the original release. Any glitches that were patched out in that time are inaccessible on the Switch version, as well as on the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC versions. But if you happen to own a physical copy of the PlayStation 4 version and deny your console the chance to download the software update, you'll be able to play Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time version 1.00. This version of the game contains the keyboard glitch, which a colorblind programmer at Toys for Bob accidentally left in the game and was eventually patched out. Once you've got the correctly incorrect version of the game, here's how the glitch works. Step 1. Plug in a USB keyboard. Step 2. Pay your respects. Pressing the F key while on the map screen will trigger the cutscene that normally plays after finishing Insanity Peak. Pressing F a second time will play the same cutscene for a real grind, a third time the one for Crash Compactor, and so on. Each time this happens, the next level on the map will be unlocked, even if the level leading to it hasn't been finished yet. You won't be able to move there, but this can easily be fixed by entering and exiting any level. By using this glitch, we can theoretically bypass the entire game. However, it should be noted that any levels we skip won't contribute anything to the completion percentage or the gem count, and this is still a max percent run. Also, if we unlock a level by skipping its predecessor, it won't be selectable from the level status menu. You'll have to enter it from the map itself. We can even use the keyboard glitch to access timeline levels such as Potion Commotion. The Tauna section is pretty simple, and passing the baton to Crash puts us at a later point in the level than we could reach and give it a spin. Unfortunately, the path is blocked by a stack of reinforced crates, and the ceiling is too low to hit them with a belly flop. The only way past here would be to use a Carno, so this timeline is impossible. In Dragon On, we can interrupt Embryo's dialogue for a trophy, but we can't do much else. Once we reach a Carno, we can clear the first gap by using the box as a stepping stone, but the second gap is too wide. Not only does this mean the level itself is impossible, meaning we have to skip it with the keyboard glitch, but we also can't get the blue gem by reaching the end without breaking any boxes. For the first time ever in the history of this channel, a colored gem is impossible spinless. There's also a trophy for ringing all the gongs in this level, and while we can access all of them through Bandicoot Battle Mode, one of the gongs is impossible to hit with a belly flop or side, explicitly requiring a Carno. Off Balance has a trophy we can get right at the start by knocking down a bumper berry, but doing so spinless is no easy feat. Your best bet is to do an extremely precise belly flop on the left-hand branch. A short ways into the level is this extra long gap with the lantern shooting green fire at you the whole time. Thankfully, we can clear this gap with a perfect slide jump, which also lets us reach the flashback tape. Unfortunately, this jump shortly after is too long and too high for us. If this were any other Crash game, we might have been able to damage boost off the dragons for extra height, but in Crash 4, that mechanic has been completely removed. Looks like we have to skip this level too, and head straight to Trouble Brewing to meet our worst nightmare.
Yes, it is I, Embryo! My name sounds like a fetus.
The first phase is nice and simple, as the blobs can damage Embryo by jumping or sliding into them. The second phase, however, is not. Hulkbryo can only be damaged by pushing him off the edge of the arena, and the only way to push him is with a Carno. Belly flops don't even phase him, and sliding is basically a suicide maneuver. I guess we're skipping the entirety of Tranquility Falls. There's a bit of a problem though. The keyboard glitch only unlocks new levels, not new dimensions. The path to the next dimension won't appear unless we beat the final level of the current dimension. For example, pressing F on Trouble Brewing unlocks Offbeat in Mosquito Marsh, but Mosquito Marsh itself doesn't exist until we clear Trouble Brewing properly by defeating Embryo. We can still play Offbeat in Bandicoot Battle to get the Alley Cat trophy, but finishing it here won't count towards our story mode progress. Also, despite receiving the notification that we have unlocked Inverted mode, none of the inverted levels are actually selectable for the same reasons. That alone means we miss out on a couple hundred gems, about 40% worth of completion, and worst of all, the warped biker skin. On the bright side, we can at least unlock Dingodale's timelines for real, and Thar He Blows is found in Salty Wharf, so we can actually play it. Dingodale has a spin for both his primary and secondary attacks, neither of which are legal. You'll be using his vacuum gun to break boxes, and TNT barrels for combat.
Jump on a TNT crate. What am I, a bandicoot?
There's a trophy for firing the cannons here, but when I tried using a TNT barrel, it did nothing. This trophy seems to be locked behind a door with a spin-shaped keyhole. During Crash's portion, there's a pair of boxes above a moving platform that are difficult to break safely. I recommend breaking the left one while moving forwards while saving the right for the return trip. The bonus round has an extra tall TNT stack which is impossible to jump over without spinning the 2 basic crates. And once that stack explodes, we can't jump far enough to get past the next one safely. However, if we grab an Aku Aku mask right by the entrance and slide into the TNT, the explosion pattern leaves the topmost TNT intact, which we can bounce off to reach the other side. With the completion of this level, our spinless percentage goes up from 10% to a whopping 11.
1!
But is that really the best we can do? Do we need to turn this into a minimalist run? Not quite! Remember how the keyboard glitch works? It doesn't just unlock the next level, it also plays the post-level cutscene. The post-level cutscene for the Crate Escape teleports Crash directly to the Cortex Island map, meaning we can throw Embryo in the trash and skip straight to Nitro processing. This level is sadly unskippable even with the keyboard glitch, but Akano is completely absent, so it's not a big deal. There is this one box beneath an iron crate which is liable to crush us if we slide under. Thankfully, sliding into it from the corner is 100% safe. We also pick up our 5th flashback tape here, unlocking the outfit durability exam. This was one of the more difficult tapes to clear since the second half has mid-air switch crates with TNTs beneath them. Luckily, there's one specific pixel where you can belly flop onto the switch crate and lands there without triggering the TNT. I recommend taking out the TNTs on the left side before doing this though, as they tend to interfere. Once you get up, the Nitro switch crate will take care of the rest. And I've got even more good news. Finishing Nitro processing also summons the tether back to the snacks dimension. Unfortunately, we can only travel as far back as Rush Hour since Food Run doesn't exist until we defeat the Doctor's Entropy. Dingodale's portion of Rush Hour has a crate stack with iron on top and a Nitro on the bottom. It takes a precise mid-air vacuum to grab the 1-up without blowing ourselves up, but I can do it pretty consistently. Be careful where you vacuum with this crate cluster, lest you accidentally suck up a Nitro from nearby. In Torna's half, there's a countdown crate that spawns in these boxes for a limited amount of time. The spin kick would theoretically be the best way to break them all in one cycle, but instead we have to bounce off the first 2, then slam into the last 2. The Crate Escape is our first Cortex level, and Cortex is the one character who doesn't even like spinning. The final chase sequence, though, has us using Crash again. The boxes here fly past at lightning speed on extremely narrow platforms at varying heights. The first couple have room to slide, but most of them you'll have to bounce off with absolutely perfect timing. And if you're going for the perfect relic, one slip-up sends you all the way back to the beginning of Cortex's section. But, by some miracle, I managed to pull it off. Toxic Tunnels is the single most infamous level in the entire franchise thanks to its gem path. So it's a good thing we can't use it. To even enter this path, we need all 4 colored gems, and we only have 2. The blue gem is in Dragon On, which we can't finish, and the yellow gem is in Run It By You, which we can't start. This locks us out of 65 boxes and the hidden gem, not to mention this unbreakable stack of 5 in the bonus round. But the bigger loss comes from the Wumpa gems. Even by scrounging every single accessible box in the entire level, including an awesome belly flop into a TNT with a frame-perfect jump to escape, how did I do that on my first try? I still only got 65% of the Wumpa Fruit in this level. I was able to get the flashback tape though, so I could play Embryo Superior Study. The biggest roadblock in this level is a single arrow crate that can't be broken from the side, with a floor of nitros beneath it. Once we blow up the nitros, the next thing under it is a set of outline crates, which will transform into iron crates when the switch is activated. Fortunately, this level is just one big loop, so we can just jump over from the beginning after one lap and belly flop into the crate safely. Cortex Castle has an Akano section halfway through, and while a few of the gaps are clearable without him, this part presents an issue. And no, it's not the nice lab assistant. We can dupe him into swinging his sword early and land beside him safely. No, the problem is the mid-air nitros immediately after. The only way past here is to bounce off the nitros, which causes them to explode instantly, and Kapunawa isn't here to help us. You'll need at least 2 damage boosts to clear this area, and there are 0 masks prior to this, which means you need to use Death Abuse. Which means the Perfect Relic, the 3 Deaths Gem, and the Flashback Tape are all impossible without Akano. And the time trial only has 1 Aku Aku crate before this section, which means even the Sapphire Relic isn't possible for this level. Akano shows up multiple times during the final stretch of the level, but all of his jumps are just barely possible. The path to the Hidden Gem is a lot more vertical, but we can jump up to the laser and use it as a footstool. The ending of Seeing Double takes us through the same section, and while the level itself isn't much harder, there's a mid-air reinforced crate that we can't break. Also, I'm fairly certain that the Platinum Relic for Seeing Double is theoretically feasible, but is greatly dependent on getting a fast cycle with the bat in Cortex's section, which my run did not. Regardless, we are now ready to enter the final boss level, the Past Unmasked. To damage Cortex, we need to bounce off the Shoot-O-Matics a few times, then slide or belly flop into the lab assistance, which is no more difficult than usual. As if to mock us, the final phase has Cortex using Akano for his attack, but despite getting a decent shot in almost immediately, we can once again safely ignore him. With Cortex prophesying against himself, the Crash 4 Spinless Run is officially conquered! Of course, our completion percentage is only 18%, and there are 2 bonus endings unlocked for reaching 100 and 106%. But with one final use of the keyboard glitch, we can keep pressing F past the final boss to trigger both of these endings and get the trophies for their viewership. Our final completion totals are 18 levels complete, 90 clear gems, 2 colored gems, 0 inverted gems, 6 flashback tapes, 6 platinum flashback relics, 15 time relics with 11 gold and 3 platinum, 11 insanely perfect relics, and 27 trophies. The remaining trophies are either locked behind using the triple spin, getting all the collectibles, or completing specific tasks in levels we can't access. We could maybe get ladies first by finishing one of Coco's flashback tapes, but since they're unlocked in a linear order, that doesn't look likely. Even so, this just might be my favorite Spinless run yet. If you have access to a physical PS4 copy, I highly recommend it. Of course, if you'd rather observe this torture from a distance, you can watch my livestream archives in the description. And if you can beat one of my time trial records, feel free to let me know. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next challenge run. That's all for now, and I will see you down under.